and it basically says that straight stream firefighting is far superior to gas cooling. And ever since, that was 2017, really interesting paper. I mean, breaks everything down. Used thermocouplers. It's really good, really in depth. If you're into firefighting, it's well worth the read. And it basically says that actually, what we think we're doing with gas cooling, to actually be really proficient, to have it to work properly, the conditions have to be so perfect, and the person operating that branch has to be like a marksman level kind of, to make a military equivalent, like a marksman to operate. Whereas, in the nicest possible way, open a branch up and sort of doing it upside down is fairly straightforward. And
responses, engine 5, engine 3, engine 1, ladder 3, ladder 2, rescue 1. We've got full showing. Division 1, you're on location, box 23, reporting smoke showing 727.
What's going on, everybody? Before we get into the episode, I just wanted to remind you that May 2nd and 3rd of this year is the second annual Metro Boston Fire School Conference. We have a lot of good hands-on training and a lot of good lectures for the weekend. It's going to be a great time. If you're interested in registering, take a look at the link in the description. We hope to see you guys there. Thanks. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Jobtlks podcast. Pretty different and exciting episode today. So I'm here with Matt Adams, who's a firefighter in the UK. What's up, Matt? How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Oh, like you said in per your request, not going to give out your department, but you're a firefighter in kind of the northern UK area. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually work in the south of the country. I've started off in the north, and I've progressively worked my way further south. So, yeah, I work in the south of the country. Yeah.
Nice. So Matt reached out to me on Instagram, sent a message that just basically said, "Hey, if you ever want to get on and talk about the differences between firefighting in America and the UK, give me a shout." I think I saw it like 3 months after you sent it, unfortunately, so I apologize for that. But here we are, man. So I'm glad to have you on. I think it's interesting. We basically just talked through a whole episode just chatting before we actually hit the record button. So we're gonna have to go through all of it again. But it's good stuff, and I'm pretty excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've already said, I kind of looked at it thinking there's going to be so many differences here, but actually there's a lot of similarities. It's just the way in which we go about doing it look slightly different. And I imagine me explaining certain things to you, like I've done in the pre-talk, is interesting to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. So before we start talking about the firefighting, let's talk about you a little bit. So you're a second generation firefighter. You've been almost a decade in the fire service in the UK, and you're now a crew commander, which is the equivalent of our lieutenant. You have been for a couple of years.
Yeah, so I used to be a crew commander. So what I should have probably put in that bio is, of the nearly 10 years, I was 2 years as a crew commander. I've since transferred from my previous fire brigade to my current one. And a part of that transfer process is I basically relinquished my ranks. I'm back at the moment as a firefighter, which, to be fair, having just had a little baby girl, my wife and I's first one, it's actually been quite nice to have no responsibility and just sit in the back of a fire engine and drive a fire engine and kind of go to work and partially turn off, if I'm honest with you. It's been nice. It's been nice not having the responsibility, but the main reason I moved is I've moved to a department that is significantly larger in terms of demographic and just size of the service. And it's always been the back of my head, like, oh, I could probably go to this place. It's a bit bigger, more bigger city, more toys to play with, basically. An opportunity came up, and I was like, right, okay, if I don't go now, there's a bit of a confusion about me transferring in at rank or coming as a firefighter. And in the end, I was like, right, okay, if I don't go now, I never will. So yeah, I took the plunge. So I was a crew commander, which is like your lieutenant. I did that for 2 years. I've still got all my qualifications for it. I've just got to go back through the process for the department I'm at now.
So even more similarities there. So I did the same thing. I started on a smaller job, and then opportunity opened up for the city I work in now, and I ended up here, and I wasn't a lieutenant there, but same thing. You go back right to the beginnings, start over with your, vacation leave and all that stuff. But it's hard to leave the smaller jobs for the people, but the job is different, and I definitely have no regrets. I love the place I ended up in now.
Yeah, that's the.
So you also teach. Good.
I say I completely agree with you. Is that exact same thing? Is that small sort of service is fantastic people because it's more intimate, but ultimately it's like right, I need to go to more fires. I need to go to more jobs, more shouts as we call it over here, in order to sort of to get more exposure.
So shouts is your word for job. So we say, oh, we had a job last night. You say, oh, we had a shout.
Actually,
Nice.
how many shouts does it get? And it's like, well, some of the stations where I work, they get 4.5, 3,500 shouts a year, and that's just fire. It's not EMS or anything else. Part of that would be what we call special service calls. So anything that's not putting out fires, special service call will be, a road traffic collision, rescue from height, rescue from water, anything that's not a fire, basically, we go to. But no EMS. Thanks, right?
So for a shout for you guys, is that just turning your wheel? Is that going out the door? Or is that like confirmed fire?
It's a shout will be anything. So anything that's blue light response. So if someone's called 999 and said, right, my car's on fire, my house on fire, or my kid's stuck in, like I had before, a little lad. Uh, I imagine the same in America for like toddlers training potty lids. So like he'd go like a seat for them to sit on a real toilet. He literally, his mum said we just gone out and bought it, and he managed to get his head rammed through it. But where it sat around his head, he then couldn't get it back over. And all I can remember is it come in, it was like child trapped with toilet seat around head. I'm thinking, what? Like, this is a bit. So anyway, we go there, and I remember walking up the drive, and they had a sofa against like this bay window. I've got the tool bag, and I was officer in charge, and walking up thinking, this is. I'm not sure what to expect of this. And as I'm getting towards the front door, this little lad's head popped up over the sofa with this toilet seat stuck around his head. And it's all right, okay. So yeah, as long as it's a blue light response, it's a shout basically. And that might be
Okay.
alarms or a fire or a bin fire, anything that's us turning the wheel as in going out to a blue light shout is a.
All right. Gotcha. So for us, we generally use job as like an actual, we worked an actual fire.
Yeah.
And we just say we had a call or run. We call them runs. If
Yeah.
you get runs.
I think that's
Um,
European because we've been saying for shout. We say, is it a job or not? A job would be like a working job, whereas I guess a shout's your run. How many runs you get? It might be a false alarm. That's what a shout is, but a shout's a run.
Gotcha. All right. So in addition to working for your department, you also teach at the International Fire Service College. What do you teach?
So I'm a bridge apparatus and road traffic collision instructor. So it's any kind of foundational search and rescue and firefighting for new recruits and road traffic collision extrication. So car wrecks, anything like that is what I teach. And most of the time, because the college has it's an international college, so it has a lot of the time our international students are from the Middle East. So like Qatar, Kuwait, UAE. I'll be over. Some of them have come across like for 18 months at a time, and they're here, and they're basically officer cadets. So the 18-year-olds, most of them are like military, and they're going to be protecting air bases. Some of them, we've had a few civil defense, particularly from Saudi Arabia, but it's teaching them. And then in terms of the kind of the UK or the county brigades, it's what we call FFDP, so Firefighter Development Program. So when fire services take on brand new recruits, some services have the capacity to teach these recruits in their own internal training departments. They might have their own training centre, training school. But the government over here, we have an apprenticeship levy. And basically that means that the fire service can put people through an apprenticeship where they get a proper recognised qualification as a firefighter. And a part of that, they get cheap access to the fire service college. So we have at the moment, there's like Warwickshire, which is a county brigade, Royal Berkshire's county brigade. They'll have probably 10, 15 recruits, and they'll do 10 weeks there. And then they'll go back to their own service, and they might do another 10 weeks or 3, 4 weeks, whatever it may be.
Okay. That's not too different from us. So So for us, every state kind of does their own thing, but here in Massachusetts, where I am, there are a couple of departments that host their own. We call them academies.
Yes.
They host their own recruit classes, have the capacity, but the state runs a state fund fire academy that's paid by like dividends from the insurance companies.
All right.
So it doesn't cost any money to send anybody there other than their gear and, overtime costs or things like that, salaries. And we have 3 campuses. So we have 3 campuses in the state. So depending on where the town is and where the openings are, they can send it's the same curriculum through the 3
So your
through the 3
insurance company
academies.
will pay for it.
Yeah, so basically your homeowner's insurance here in Massachusetts funds the cost of the academy.
Well, that's quite impressive. Fair play.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like I said, it's very state dependent. Every state kinda does their own thing, and I have no idea how it works outside of Massachusetts.
Well, my college over here used to be owned by the government, the Home Office, and then in 2013 it was privatized and bought over by Capita, and they now run it. But yeah, it used to be taxpayers' money that ran the college, whereas now it's private organisations that own it. And to be fair, they've kind of revived it in some respects. They've kind of brought it. They've massively diversified what courses they offer. I mean, we have like the special forces come and like rappel into some of the smoke buildings and throw flashbangs and shoot and stuff. So like it's massively evolved. I mean, the fire service college is probably an unfair name for it now because we've got rescue paramedics. So in over here we have standard paramedics that work for the ambulance service, and our ambulance services are regionalised. So you'll have like London Ambulance Service for like the basically London and Greater London, Southwest, which will be a region of the country, like South Central, and Yorkshire, all that kind of stuff. In them teams, or sorry, in them regions, we have what's called HART teams, so hazardous area response paramedics. So off the back of 9/11 and the 7/7 bombings, they basically realised actually when these people get hurt and sort of blown up and trapped below grade or in structural collapses or anything like any hazardous area, no one's trained by the fire service and our miners rescue to go in and rescue these people. But the miners rescue and the fire service, they don't have any real clinical skills. We can't do anything other than, at that time, put a bandage on and give them some, positive reassurance. So off the back of that, they basically made these heart teams. They have it's basically USAR is what it is. It's USAR for the ambulance service is the best way to describe it, and they take up a large amount of the fire service college now, training their paramedics.
That sounds very similar to FDNY. FDNY has FDNY EMS, but then they have their specialty rescue paramedics. Unlike, it sounds like the UK, in America, the fire service is also largely the EMS service for their town and city. Unless you start going into bigger departments and bigger services, even on my job, we don't run our ambulances, but we staff paramedics and we send paramedics to calls, and we have paramedics on our heavy rescue for those same reasons.
Which makes perfect sense. I mean that we have a little bit more. I mean, my organisation I work for now, we're all rescue trained, so we can all give Tlks as a painkiller, but that is like unbelievably rare and uncommon in the UK. The fact that we have that it is like some people you speak to other people, other brigades, they're like taken back. Like you're basically a doctor then. It's that we're very I'm not gonna say we avoid the trauma because obviously road traffic collisions and car crashes, we're often first in attendance by ourselves. So it pays for us to have a good level of training, even if it's like most of it's just dealing with catastrophic bleeds and providing oxygen because ultimately, if we're there first, the ambulance is 20, 30 minutes away because we have some very, very rural locations across the UK. And you've been waiting quite some time. And I imagine the same in America. Like our ambulance service is massively stretched. So, having some basic, sometimes more than basic training on how to stabilize somebody, because otherwise, if we don't do that, then it's just body recovery. In which case, you might as well not do anything. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it sounds good the fact you have paramedics on your trucks that can do that.
I guess it depends. Like I'm a paramedic too, so I don't mind it. But there's definitely a little bit of a culture clash since the introduction of
Yeah.
paramedics into
I can only imagine.
definitely a culture.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I think the fire academy for you guys, or the fire college for you guys, being privatized versus ours, which is state funded. I think, like you said, like the privatized gives you the ability to do more, right, without the red
Yeah,
tape necessarily surrounding it from any sort of government funded
yeah,
anything.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's.
Uh,
It's definitely the case, but the thing is, the college has been built in the 70s, and the buildings are pretty much the same as they were then. It's an old air base, basically. It's an old World War II air base. It's huge. It's a runway they've basically built buildings on. So the capacity for it, you could have a mini town if the money was there to build it. Which everyone that works there is just like hoping, right, they're going to get another big contract, and that'll bring more money in. Then we'll build this, and we'll build this. That's sounding like hopefully there's going to be some new buildings built, because it's a fantastic place. It's one of the few places in the UK where it's live fire and there's no temperature probes. Which, yeah, with my health and safety hat on, I should be saying, oh, it's very dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that. But in reality, realistically, it should be a set temperature. So at head height whilst kneeling, it should be no more than 250 degrees Celsius. So I've got no idea what that is in Fahrenheit. Is it 600?
so it'd be 250, so it'd be closer to five. It'd be closer to 500. Actually, I'll do the. I pulled up Google
Maths.
bars to psi to gallon, so I could convert them when we talked, but I didn't pull that one up. Let's see, Celsius to Fahrenheit. Did you say 250?
Yeah, 250.
32. Yeah, it's a little closer to 500.
So that's basically what's meant to be the national cutoff at head height whilst kneeling. Anything more than that is meant to be a little bit of it's a bit dangerous. But at the college, it's just kind of set fire to it. Realistically, it's pallet wood and sometimes chipboard, sometimes MDF. It's like, well, a real fire is going to be way more wattage and heat than this. So you've got to learn to figure it out here. So which
Yeah,
is why
definitely.
it's renowned for that. It is the most realistic you can get. Yeah, maybe within the realms of safety. And I'll put it that way, within the realms of safety. It's not unsafe what we do at all. It's just that we can push the boundaries more so because the buildings allow us to, and our ways of controlling if it was to get excessive heat is sort of a lot more superior to maybe other training venues.
Yeah, nice. And you guys, so our academy does, we do officer development, we do technical rescue, we do like rapid intervention, we do recruit programs. So we have a lot of programs through our state fire academy. You guys sound like you have kind of the same thing.
Very similar, but yours sounds like it's a lot more. Most of the fire service college training is recruit, sort of acquisition stage training. So it's like you're fresh off the street or you're fresh in the fire service. You're going to be taught how to do it from instructors. The college do a little bit with certain organisations. Like Oxfordshire's one of them, Berkshire and Buckinghamshire, where they do a lot more of their accreditation, revalidation for incident commanders and bridge apparatus wearers. They do a lot more of that at the college, but because they've basically got a good working relationship and whatever contract sawn up. So their firefighters are very fortunate. They have a lot of opportunities to go and practice and train and have realistic scenarios. But in terms of like actual input and training, other than what you get on your recruits course, and then whatever your service or organization can deliver from their internal learning and development team, there isn't much external training, which, pros and cons is that a lot of services have isms of whatever way, which we like to organise and do certain things. So it's great that you want to learn your services way, understand how it operates, but also you can be blinkered to thinking this is the only way of doing it. And there's lots of different ways of doing things, and it's trying to fight back against us being insular. What again? In the sort of conversation we've had, my point of view, sort of the American fire service and sort of the culture of firefighting in America in general, you seem to have, I'm not sure if holistic's the right word, but you have a lot more options in terms of where you can get your training, whereas that's not quite the same over here.
Yeah, I think we were talking about a little bit. There are conferences all over the country, at least a decent sized conference, probably every month somewhere in the country, if you were to look at it. I think it's very dependent on the culture of the region. So different regions have different cultures as far as like seeking external training, and then it's also kind of depends on the culture of whether people are willing to spend their own money for the training. So that's hurdles. Or if you have a good department culture where the department is willing to pay you to attend training outside of your own service area. So it really depends region to region, and then even within the region depends, town and department and chief to to the next one. But there is a significant amount of external training that you can get in America for sure if you're willing to spend money to do it.
which is ace. I mean, there's certain things that we just don't. The prime example that sits in my head is I had a house fire. My last, we call them tours. Most of the shift patterns in the UK, we operate a 2-2-4, so 2 day, 2 night, 4 days off. That's the vast majority of fire service. There's a few like intricate shift patterns, but mostly it's that. And we call that a tour. So like your 4 shifts make up a tour. And I was detached to another station, so out duties. I mean, house fire. And, it's interesting seeing how you guys, your like method of entry and how you force doors and get in, because sometimes I look at them and think they must have been out of paper, because our doors are just, they just do not. I mean, I'm not knocking it for a second. There's some highly skilled forcible entry operators without a shadow of a doubt. But I would love, if I could ever do it, is to bring a European composite door over and see if that can be forced quite so easily, because mate, they're made out of steel. They just do not go. And we had a right mare trying to get into this door for this house fire. In the end, I had to put the Halligan bar through the window and then basically resip and miss out the locks because we just could not. It just was not going.
After this episode, you got to send me some photos of what you're talking about, because forcible entry is maybe my favorite topic in the fire service. So
It's the
very
one
very
thing
interesting.
we don't. I mean, my first brigade I joined, the police did our method of entry training, and basically we had big red keys. If you've ever seen them before,
No,
basically it's probably like, I imagine maybe SWAT teams have them. Essentially, what it is, a metal entry tool with a handle here and a handle here, and the front of it is like 30 pounds of concrete, basically.
it's a ram. It's like a handheld ram.
Not really. It's you have to physically, like a ram. Yeah, I suppose it is. And
Yeah.
we used the service I worked for. We had that on our pump, so we didn't really use Halligan bars, or we call them hooligan bars. We don't call them Halligan bars; they're called hooligan because it's the best tool to have to break in. So we don't really use that. We'd use these enforcers and or big red keys, and it was so much fun smashing doors in. But then I transferred to a different organisation, don't have that. All of a sudden, you've got a sledgehammer and a hooligan bar, and maybe a fire axe. So you have your irons. No one's in the organisation I went to. There was no formal training of method of entry. So mate, you saw some crazy things. And bearing in mind, like in terms of really conversation before about like powers of entry, UK fighters in the UK, when we're on duty, the law basically says if we suspect a fire's broken out or an emergency, we can smash open any door. We can destroy anything we want if we believe that's going to save life or property. The irony being that we have that power and we're not necessarily taught how to break into places is quite ironic.
Yeah, I it's funny because I imagine that we have a law somewhere that says that. We talk a lot about like authority having jurisdiction here. I've never seen it like written, but it's a default. I mean,
Yes,
you
yeah,
can't stabilize the incident if you can't get into the incident.
exactly that. Exactly that. It's something we're definitely lagging.
Right. Real quick to finish up your intro here is aside from teaching and working for your department, you also compete. You do the British Firefighter Challenge, and you represented the UK in the toughest firefighter alive. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's a bit like the British Firefighter Challenge is like the America. Is it Combat Challenge or the series in America?
Yeah, we have the one of the guys on my job too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically our equivalent of that in the UK. I've done it for the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I sort of stopped playing rugby during the fire service, needed something to do because I was like, right, I've played sport since I was a kid. I need something to do, and I kind of naturally fell into that. And I've been fortunate enough to have some success in it, and some of that success is sort of winning the British title a few times, and then I was fortunate enough to get picked to go to Saudi Arabia to do the toughest firefighter alive, which was again one of them things where the my mate who was organised, oh, do you fancy? Would you ever go to Saudi Arabia to do this? And I was like, well, yeah, okay, sounds great. But one of them things where you just think it's the back of a fag packet. It's not really going to happen. And then it started happening, and it was like, right, okay. And there was, I can't think how many other countries were there, but there was some absolutely monstrous people there, like some proper, serious athletes and firefighters. And it was really like Jerry Johnson. I met him out there. If you've ever heard of Jerry Johnson, yeah, he's a nice dude. He's significantly smaller than I thought he was, but he's a really nice dude. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to meet people and sort of talk about the job as well, and that's kind of what started fueling the conversation. It's my first real time. You had an opportunity to sit down with there's like some Australian firefighters there, some from New Zealand, some from Canadians, some Americans, and just sit down and talk about the job. And that's when like little things started to pick up, thinking that's different how we do it, and that makes more sense than what we do, or actually what we do makes more sense than what you do. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to go out there and compete. And I actually went out there with a horrifically bad back. I tore my back before I went out there, and didn't say anything, and sort of went as a bit of a jolly. But it was still good fun. It was still good fun.
And you're the reigning champ for the British firefighter competition, right? British Firefighter Challenge.
Last 2 years, yeah.
Awesome, man! Congratulations. That's I'm sure that's a lot of work.
It's just running around. Really, is what it is. Yeah, it's a good crack. There's quite a few sort of lads and lasses that do it, and it's good fun.
That's awesome. So I guess, I mean, I shouldn't say to start off. We've already kind of started talking about some of the stuff, but I think maybe one of the most interesting and maybe a good jumping off point to talk about the big differences between the American and the British Fire Service is, I don't know if we should talk about the actual response packages you guys put together, and then we can talk about how you actually extinguishment. Maybe would be a good way to go. So we talked a little bit about for the American Fire Service, we have an engine, we have aerial ladders, we have heavy rescues, and those are all part of general assignments. So I sent you a thing from my department the other day. So we put engines, ladders, and heavy rescues on every report of a fire, basically. Yeah. But you guys do things significantly different.
Yeah, in that respect, we do. Yes, we don't really have. I think the way I described it to you is every fire appliance, well, fire engine, fire appliance, how you want to call it, a pump. We have about 10 different names you could give a fire engine in the UK, but most places refer to it as a pump. That operates a bit like a FDNY squad company in terms of it's all hazards. It carries equipment for road traffic collisions, so like our spreaders and cutters. It carries all that. Any sort of first aid equipment we might need with that. It also has our pump on board, and it also carries hose, ladders, a light portable pump, so if you have to get water from an open water source, and it carries our ventilation fans as well. So if we do positive pressure ventilation or positive pressure attack, it carries that. So it's literally a frontline appliance, and I say some pictures of them. They're pretty much all the same across the UK, very similar styles, maybe difference in stowage, but yeah, we call them pumps. In the service I work for, we have what we call pumps and ladders. So a ladder's not what you think is a ladder. A ladder basically means it carries our largest ladder, which is a 13.5 ladder. So that would probably reach fully extended the fourth floor of a building.
30-meter ladder?
13.5.
13. Oh, I thought you said 30. I was like, geez, you're throwing 90.
It takes like 10 blokes.
Yeah, so it would be you'd be like between our 40 and 50 foot, like a 45-foot ladder.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we talked about before that I find interesting is you don't send aerial ladders to a reported residential fire unless you have a report of people trapped.
Yeah, so like when we when our fire control, so like what you call as dispatch, they'll basically receive the 999 call and they'll kind of interrogate that. So interrogate's the wrong word. They'll question the person that's calling and they'll ask, where is the fire? What's on fire? Is it your property? Do you know who's in there? And if sort of trigger words they say, if it's a high-rise property, so any high-rise building in my service area, that will get a aerial ladder coming to it. So we have a dedicated ladder that is primary staffed, and that will turn up to any reports of alarms, anything like in a residential building. It's coming. But like a house, for example, it won't be on that unless the person says that the fire's in the roof space or the roof's collapsed, wherever it may be. It'll be most likely on a house fire. The first officer in attendance, they may ask for the attendance of an aerial ladder platform because they warrant it for a water tower or for rescues.
Right.
Yeah.
So any high rise residential apartment building, or you call them flat buildings, right?
Yeah.
Or reported people are collapsed, it goes.
Yeah. Basically anything that any high rise building is going, any commercial building to a certain extent, it may be on the PDA. It depends. I mean, we have to, part of our, again, the legislation we have to go around and visit different businesses, whether it's sort of your local post office, your local supermarket, or it could be a commercial company making, large steel manufacturing. We have to go around and visit these premises, not only just make sure they're following sort of fire safety legislation and law, but more like for us as crews is familiarization with that building. So, having the layout to it, what do they actually make in there? What nasties are inside there? What could harm us? What's the layout? Is there open trenches? Things like that. And on that kind of risk visit, as we call it, it might be determined by the officer in charge. Actually, this building's a commercial building. Its PDA might be 4 pumping appliances, but due to solar panels or whatever it may be, actually the aerial should come onto it. So from there, you could change the PDA based upon the specific risk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we call that pre-incident planning. We do a similar thing.
Yeah.
So when we do inspections and stuff, or just on company level training, we'll go out and take a look at high hazard buildings or areas or things like that, just to get a feel for what's going on there. And you said the adding the aerial to high rise was added after Grenfell's, or Grenfell's had an impact on what you do for high rise apartment buildings?
Grenfell had a massive impact. So it used to be, again, every organisation had different predetermined attendances for high-rise buildings. So London, for example, London have got, copious amounts of firefighters, lots of, as they call it, machines. They don't call them fire engines, the machines. They could afford to have 4 or 5 fire engines and an aerial go to every high-rise, alarms. Whereas smaller cities, smaller counties, you quite quickly strip all the first available appliances by sending that many. A lot of them have, it might be 1 or 2 pumps to a high-rise alarms, which is basically, a cool point's been broken, or if that building's got a built-in alarm panel, it might be integrated alarm panel. So you've burnt toast in your flat, alarm goes off, and you can't cancel it. We're coming either way. And obviously, you can imagine there's been years and years and years of that, and it's called unwanted fire signals. Basically, we've been signaled to a fire, but it's nothing there. And over the years, the fire service in the UK have basically tried to minimise the attendance there because, it's wasting time, wasting fuel, interrupting training, and also we're going to jobs that we need to be there. But Grenfell's basically kind of massively changed that, and probably for the right reasons. In my service, again, the PDA for a high-rise building fire, particularly like a smell of burning. So someone calls up and says, "Oh, I can smell something burning." That will get 7 appliances and an aerial and a command unit. So quite quickly, we bring the cavalry to something like that off of the back of Grenfell. That kind of opened everybody's eyes up to actually that we need more resources than you think, and there's lots of different tasks. And we even have things like which I forgot to mention to you before. We have evacuation sectors now. So we have for high-rise firefighting, we use an acronym called RICE. and it's basically like a trigger prompt for incident commanders, and it stands for rescues, interventions, containment, and evacuation. So what they're basically saying is that in hindsight, when the first pumps got to Grenfell and they realised it was spreading beyond the room of origin and up the facade of the building, they should have called for an evacuation. But obviously, hindsight's 2020. But all the kind of things off the back of that is to basically train commanders and firefighters to recognise when a building's failing, the construction's failing you, and what to do. So we have an evacuation sector now, which is a sort of dedicated team of firefighters. And every time, unfortunately, every time I've done a sort of mock scenario where we do the evacuation, it is absolute carnage. But it's again, it's something that as an organisation and as a fire service across the UK that we've recognised actually we could probably save more lives if instead of making people stay put, which is what most buildings in the UK are, we have something called a stay put policy. So the building's constructed in such a way that you're basically in like a 2-hour fireproof concrete box. What Grenfell basically showed all. Yeah, yeah, exactly that. But obviously Grenfell, they wrapped the building in basically solid gasoline, as you call it. Obviously the results were horrific. So it's to kind of mitigate that. Our predetermined attendants are pretty weighty now, and rightly so.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge attendance. So you said seven pumps and an aerial, so 8 apparatus for just a reported smell of burning, and that's a big response.
Yeah, for a lot.
Compared to what's your standard response for a residential, like standard residential single family home?
Will be so again, like I said to you before, if it comes in as a person's reported, so if someone calls up and say, "Oh, there's definitely somebody in there," or "I'm the occupant, I'm stuck in my house, I can't get out," that comes as a person's reported, and that automatically triggers 3 of the nearest fire appliances to attend. And what we base off is we have something called ridership. So and I said before, our minimum ridership of any fire appliance is 4, so we can't go below 4. They trialed riding 3 in some of our like rural on-call fire stations, which is I guess is like volunteer, but they're on pages basically, and it was a little bit, yeah, it was just asking for trouble. City and sort of established fire brigades don't really use that model, so our minimum's 4 basically. And it's written down that if you have a confirmed residential fire, that you need 9 firefighters there. So you'll get 2 appliances because one should have 5 and be a ladder, and one will have 4 and be a pump. That's how we kind of break it up. But if it's persons reported, you'll get 3 appliances, which means that you need to have 13 firefighters there because of how they've determined the tasks that we need to do to make that area safe. You need 13 people to do it.
Right. Is that for your service, or is that countrywide, the ridership?
That's country. So the ridership of 4 minimum is across the entire of the UK. Minimum's 4, and we say strive for 5. That's what we say. Strive for 5. Our fire brigades union say that a pumping appliance, a single pump station should have 5 firefighters on it, and multi pump stations are having 2 fire engines, primary staffed. There should be 4 on one of them and 5 on the other. That's what we say, but that's unfortunately not always the case.
Right. So that is very service dependent here in the US. So a lot of places strive for 4. That's like getting 4 is a pretty big deal. So like my department, we have 4 assigned, but we will ride down to 3 at a minimum.
Is
But like my old job, you might be going with 2 or 1, depending. So it's very dependent on the staffing. So take my old job for example. So we staffed an ambulance, we cross staffed an engine and a ladder out of the same firehouse, and then in a second station we staffed an engine with 2. So that engine had 2 people maximum all the time. If the ambulance was on a transport and a report of a fire came in, the 2 from the south side station would take a fire engine, and then the single leftover person, if they were there that day, because we could run down to just 5 people on a shift, would take a fire engine on their own from the north side station, and then there was a shift commander separately.
mate.
So there's national recommendations, but there is nowhere near a national standard for we call it staffing or ridership. Yeah.
I mean, if we don't have 4 riders, that pumps off the run, and they'll degradate that pump. So basically, if the pump falls off, you've not got enough riders. Them 3 left over, they'll either be set onto a ladder or they'll be sent onto another station to make the ridership up there. It's like it's 4 or no playing at all. You're not going out to play.
That's great. So do you have a minimum for your daily staffing? So
Yeah,
you have to have 4 per
yeah. I'm pretty
appliance, but do
sure.
you have like appliances?
Yeah, so basically we are. There is. I'm trying to think how many we've got. 15 pumps. Um, so I want to say the minimum ridership is 72, or it might be lower than that. It might be 68. But it's it's high 60s, 70s is our minimum ridership. And like I said before, if say example, like for argument's sake, our minimum ridership 70 and we only have 69, they'll basically send out overtime, basically like, who can respond fastest finger at overtime. So if you're available, you can accept the overtime. That then brings our ridership back up and we keep the pumps online. If for whatever reason no one responds or there's no budget, whatever it may be, we then do something called degradation, and we basically then will lose strategically across the service. They know, right, okay, if we go offline, that pump can drop off. We'll bring them people from here and we'll push them over to there, and that then increases ridership in these areas. So it's very kind of calculated to do that, and it is very much a last resort to allow it. Like an appliance going off in the UK, I didn't realise you have to inform the Home Office. So basically, you got to call the government and say, by the way, this dropped off, which I never realised that. But my previous organisation was a lot smaller. There's 2 instances where we literally had nobody at all, and they were panicking. And I was like, if we've not got the people, we've not got the people. Like, it is what it is. We've got it on with it. I said, no. If this pump goes offline, we then have to speak to the Home Office and tell them, like, it has to be reported. That we've lost, because ultimately, when we're allocated money through the taxpayer from the government, but a lot of the revenue we get are from local people paying their county council tax. Basically, the county you live in, you have to pay tax to that county. Again, we're meant to be a fire service protecting the people in that area. So if it drops off, there has to be an accountability. But again, until I heard that, I never even for a second. I mean, it makes sense, but I never knew it. So yeah,
Right.
a pump dropping off over here is some serious, like, yeah, it's got to be a bad day, basically.
So for us, we call it browning out when you take a company out of service, a fire truck out of service. Extremely rare. So again, on my job, we have a minimum number of firefighters we need to staff the shift. There's been some times like on say certain holidays or certain things going on, whatever that they can't get people, and they'll say, hey, if we can't get anybody, we have to take a truck out of service. To my knowledge, they haven't actually ever got there. Eventually, somebody stands up,
Yeah,
but we generally don't drop the number of apparatus we have. We only drop the number of people, and then once we hit our minimum, then we hire back overtime. But we detail kind of the same way. So we have 4 assigned on my fire engine. If another engine on the other side of the city only has 2 that are assigned there for that day because somebody's out sick and somebody else is on vacation, they'll take one of ours and send it to that station for the day.
it makes sense.
But again, that's just how we do it, and that is not. There's no standard anything between cities and towns.
It's
Nothing is standard.
I thought that of all the things with the NFPA and how they set up guidelines, I really thought there would be a little bit more. Like for us, it's 4 or nothing at all. There's no 2 ways about it. Yeah, that surprises me. I thought it'd be a little bit more strong stance on that.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, NFPA governs, and that's our big argument is like chiefs and the administrations and places will cite NFPA standards when you want to say wear a leather helmet. That's a big traditional thing for us. NFPA standards say blah blah blah, and then you say, well, they also say that we should have 4 people on the truck and that you should replace our gear every 10 years. But
Yeah.
and then it's like, whoa. It's kind of enforced where What's that? Same conversations?
Yeah, very similar. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Say they always say, you know, it's what do they say? Same circus, different clowns, or whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the most interesting things that we talked about, and I'd known this from kind of seeing some stuff about firefighting in the UK, is how you guys seek to accomplish extinguishment of fire. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so in America, we are general high flow, so we're gallons per minute, and you guys are high pressure. So you guys are for you bars, but high PSI for us.
Yes, yeah, exactly that. I mean, majority of again, we spoke about it before. From kind of my understanding of what's happened with it is that in it is they some firefighters in the UK went over to Sweden, and a guy called Bjorkson, who was he's either firefighter or an engineer, but either way, he basically made a system which is we know as gas cooling or 3D firefighting, where he made a fog attack nozzle that basically every pulse of the trigger was about a liter of water. And the idea was that it had a diffuser on it, a metal diffuser, and the angle of the comb being about 30 degrees. Pulse of the trigger threw water up, and it basically dispersed that water into fine droplets, and that was a really, really efficient way of cooling, basically. So you could advance on a fire by cooling the gases in the overpressure, controlling them, bringing them outside of their range of flammability, and basically push it back, push it back, push it back. And then once you eventually got to the seat of the fire, you can then go to a straight stream, change the flow settings up, and then basically do a direct attack and knock the fire out. So, in principle, but I've explained that to you, Will, it sounds like, oh, that sounds really good. But in hindsight, actually trying to apply that is not gone particularly well as a sect.
Real quick, so you said it's about a liter per pulse, and that's like for us is a quart, so a quarter of a gallon. And then so what flowing in your fog pattern, what is your pressure, and what is your liters per minute?
So what it should be is it should be around 30 bars of pressure at the pump. So we basically work on the fact that if you request 30 bars at our pump, and the frictional loss, because most hose reels are 19 millimeter in diameter. My service now, we have 22 millimeters, so they're a little bit larger. Therefore, the flow rate's a little bit better. It doubles the flow rate, which is a massive bonus. But you're gonna get about 7 bar at the branch, and that's the optimal pressure to get the droplet size, and that's around 110 liters per minute. But that's liters per minute on a constant flow.
So branch is your nozzle, is that right?
Yes, yeah, branches on nozzle. Yeah,
So you guys are 100. You guys are 100 psi, which is actually about what our combination nozzles are as well.
okay,
But the difference is that you guys are flowing.
100 liters, nowhere near the amount you probably are.
What'd you say? How many liters?
100. So the branch is set to 115 liters per minute, but there's a lot of kind of suggestions that it's probably not that much. It's probably closer to 100 liters per minute.
So you guys are flowing. So our smoothbore nozzles are different, but our combination nozzles, which are kind of the same as your fog nozzles, are about 100 psi or 7 bar. But you guys are flowing 30 gallons per minute. We're flowing 150 gallons per minute at the same pressure at the
There's
nozzle.
a slight difference. Yeah, slight difference. That's all it is.
You guys are using 3/4 inch lines, and we're using inch and 3/4 inch lines. So it's interesting because it's not actually that high pressure as I thought. So I'm literally like putting the numbers in here as you're doing it. It's not as high pressure as I thought. It is starting at the pump. At the pump, it's
Yeah,
like 470 psi, but
yeah,
your friction loss is so high because of the diameter of the hose is so
yeah.
small, I'm guessing. So we're actually using the same pressures, just very, very different gallonage.
And that's kind of the argument now that a guy called Mike Stacco, who's a watch commander in the Scottish Fire Rescue Service, he's a bit of a wizard in terms of branches, well, nozzles as you call them, and he's kind of the go-to guy for lots of different tactical firefighting across the UK. And he made we're having a conversation one day, and he's like, okay, what has more pressure, a hose reel branch or a lay flat, or inch and 3/4? And I was like, wow, a hose reel's at 30 bar. He said, yeah, but how much is at the branch? And I was like, well, about 7, 8 bar. And the branches we have for our lay flat hose are like we have task force tips, delta, or acro brass. So very similar to you. It's like if you look at these branches, they say 7 bar. So it's the exact same pressure, if not more pressure than the high pressure ones to make that branch work. And it's that misconception we have in the UK is that, you don't use 1 3/4 because that's a lot of pressure. You're going to request 7 bar. A low pressure, but actually the issue is the amount of flow coming out of it for the jet reaction versus actually the pressure you need. Because the pressure is exactly the same. It just feels different because the flow's different.
Yeah. So if you took 150 feet of 1 3/4 for us, you need about 10 bar at the pump to get 7 bar at the nozzle. So you need about 145 psi at the pump to get 100 psi at the nozzle.
It sounds probably similar. We obviously with bars, we say we lose about half a bar per length. Probably, I imagine, is yours canvas hose? The construction.
Yeah,
hose?
usually cotton hose with the rubber line. Yeah.
See, ours are all synthetic, but it's double jacketed. So I imagine the frictional loss is probably similar, if not less, on your. So when we actually use 1 3/4, we're probably flowing. We have Delta 500 branches, and they're called 500s because they will allow 500 liters of water, basically. And that's our go-to 1 3/4 line if the fire warrants it. And every now and again, you'll have a commander and firefighters that are pretty happy to take in a 45 mil, as we call it. But the vast majority of the time, you sort of tell people we're going to start taking a 45 mil or 1 3/4 in, people start getting a little bit sheepish. They're not very accustomed to taking it in.
That's probably for us is probably the same as telling somebody to take a 2.5 in. So for us, our 2.5 inch line is if you have a combination nozzle is the same press, so 100 psi at the tip, but you're flowing 250 gallons a minute. So there's a lot of reaction on that.
Yeah,
Different, obviously, if you're or our smooth bores are usually around like 60 psi.
Yeah,
Let's see what that is for you guys for bars.
3, 4 bar, is it? I think.
Bars, yeah.
Yeah.
But with the same flow, but that delivers a bigger, I guess, like slug of water. So our penetration is high.
Yeah.
So we're I guess the difference is we gas cool as well. We hit the ceiling as we work our way, but then we're trying to hit the seat of the fire without having to get like right up to it necessarily, I guess.
And that's kind of as a collective across the UK. I mean, some research come out of the Netherlands, and it basically says that straight stream firefighting is far superior to gas cooling. And ever since that's 2017, really interesting paper. I mean, breaks everything down. They've used thermocouplings. It's really good, really in depth. If you're into firefighting, it's well worth the read. And it basically says that actually, what we think we're doing with gas cooling to actually be really proficient, to have it to work properly, the conditions have to be so perfect, and the person operating that branch has to be like a marksman level kind of, to make a military equivalent, like a marksman to operate. Whereas, in the nicest possible way, open a branch up and sort of doing it upside down is fairly straightforward. And they've said exactly that. We could teach people to be so much more effective by doing this option, and we could spend so much more time teaching them how to search properly or how to firefight properly and not concentrate solely on. Because I mean, like, the way we assess firefighters in containers is we specifically assess their ability to use gas cooling. And if, for example, your cone's not right and you don't hit the fire gases properly, you hit too much of the boundaries, you get marked out, even though you're doing it in like near zero visibility. So we've got this we're in a very strange transitional time between what the old guard of how things used to be and the more modern, lack of a better way, American method is the best way to put it. And it's just interesting to see how and hear and sort of watch videos from America of how they put fires out and how they operate. I dare say it's probably a lot more. It seems more dynamic than how we operate.
Do you guys have are you guys in your typical residential places, like single family homes, do you guys have as much synthetic material in them as we do? So for us, I was just talking to the academy class that's going through right now the other day about what's in the buildings that are burning, and for us, it's all plastics, which is organized gasoline.
Yeah,
And the BTU, the amount they put off, I wouldn't say every day, right? But not every fire. Like there's a lot of fires. A water can will do a big job even on some big fires. But there's definitely been times where I can't imagine. What was it? 30 gallons a minute is going to penetrate the fire and put it out. It's just like it's not going to do it. So do you guys have the same material in your homes? Are you seeing that like in actuality that it's ineffective, or is it pretty
yeah.
effective most of the time?
It's one of them things where, like, in my experience, the times where I've used a hose reel that's been effective is when either the fire it's either not quite reached flashover, it's not been able to, it's basically been ventilation limited. It can't get to a peak heat race where it actually flashes over, and it's pretty much in decay. Even if it's like false decay, we rock up, make entry, and you can put it out of a hose reel fairly easily. But then saying that, that we've had to have some quite high profile fires recently in the UK, and unfortunately quite a few fire deaths with residents in their property. And there's no way on this world you could put them out of a hose reel. It's just not, it's not happening. Depending on where people have been trained and their understanding and how they kind of size up a building, most commanders, if that fire is ventilated, taking a hose reel in, unless you are specifically going to go in as a quick attack and try to control conditions while someone else makes a grab, I would say you probably, in my opinion, you kind of dice with death a little bit there, because it's just not, like you've already said. We know we have tactical flow rate. So Paul Grimwood, who's a firefighter, he's since passed away, but he started his career in London, and he finished his career working for Kent, and he's a fire engineer. And he basically calculated that for every square meter, you basically take the square meters of a building times by 5, and that gives us a tactical flow rate. So that basically says, like, I think I said before, Will, if you had like an apartment or a flat, a 2-bedroom flat that's got a kind of living room and a shared kind of like dining area, that's roughly around 70 square meters as a bog standard sort of flat in the UK. Well, with tactical flow rate, that's 350 liters per minute, and that's based taking into account a fire that's not in a compartment. It's that entire square footage of that area is on fire. Basically, it's a foolproof way of calculating flow rate. And for us, that straight away is a inch and 3/4. That's the mindset that commanders should be in to do it. Not everyone's aware of that. Not everyone considers that. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, there's a few times where I've gone in, and there's more than a few times where I'm on a hose reel, and you're hoping for the world to open and the roof to break and the heavens to fall down, because it's just not it's just not being effective. And ultimately, I mean, my argument is always is when I talk about it is that our appliances carry 1,800 liters of water, which I want to say is maybe 400 gallons, 350
I
gallons,
gotcha.
1,800,
800,
yeah, 1,000.
1,000, for just shy of 500. So our typical pumps carry. I mean, there are multiple different sizes, but I think if you were to say a typical pump, 500 gallons, so very similar.
Very similar. So we sort of say a hose reel on constant flow, we've got 18 minutes of water if we weren't to hook into a hydrant, whereas a 45 inch and 3/4, that would give us around about 6. So there's that fear factor from commanders thinking, oh, we can't take a larger line in because we've run out of water. But in reality, if I'm flowing water for 6 minutes, it's a really, really bad day, because that means that nothing's happening.
That's a big conversation, actually, one we had in the firehouse the other day. And there's a really good article. I couldn't find it. I think it was in fire engineering a couple years ago about how much water is actually used, like in a residential first do fire attack. And it's only like, I want to say, I don't want to misquote it, but it was like 150 gallons or something like that, because you're not flowing
No,
constantly. you're flowing and moving, or you're getting there and you're flowing for a minute and then you're seeing if it's down or overhauling, whatever the case is. If you, like you said, if you're flowing an inch and three quarter for 6 straight minutes, you probably need another line with you. That's a lot of fire going on.
And it's that confidence, you know the difference.
Yeah, and so obviously your kind of personal opinion is the high flow might be a little bit better of a technique. What's the general opinion of people in the UK? Aside from, because we talked about, we run into the exact same thing you do, where the amount of work and effort determines often what we want to do. But outside of that, as far as just actual like firefighting techniques, what's the general consensus over there?
I'd say it's definitely sort of turned the corner now where taking the sort of circle of people that I interact with, sort of working at the fire college, working in service, and the tactical firefighting group that I sit on, high flow is definitely, I'm not going to say it's the in thing, but it's definitely the topic of conversation that everyone's talking about. And it's basically how do we, I mean, a lot of people sort of say, you know, our mains water, our hydrants haven't got anywhere near the flow and the pressure that, you know, you guys have in America. So there's a big argument, oh, you know, we can't adopt that because we don't have the mains pressure and the flow and everything else. Like I've already said, you know, for most fires, we don't need more than a tank of water, you know, because as long as it's put in the right place at the right time, you're all right. So it's slowly coming round to high flow, but I'd say the vast majority, again, our hose reels, or high pressure lines, they're on pneumatic drums. So I said to you before, like, you know, what can I do? I can either run out, none of our hose is pre-connected. We have to like bowl it out if it's Dutch rolled, or basically run it out and then connect it together. We have a few high-rise packs where they're Cleveland coils or Cleveland load, but not many. So what, you know, what do we rather do at 3 o'clock in the morning? Do you want to either bowl out a hose and connect it, or grab a hose reel, run it off the drum, put a car fire out, put everything out on fire, then hit the rewinds and put it back on the drum and go back to bed? There is a little bit of that. I'm not saying it's everywhere, but there's definitely a little bit of like, well, it's convenient to do it like that, and it's something that, again, acquisition training for firefighters. The Australians call the hose reel a bandage line or a first aid line because it's exactly that. It's right. We need to get something on the fire, and once we've got that on the fire, we're established. We can then bring in something more significant. Again, we've just never really seen it like that. But I think slowly we're kind of recognizing that maybe it's not quite. It's very efficient, but it's not very effective.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think that's like the efficiency makes a huge difference if the outcome is the same either way, right? So if I'm having the same outcome either way and one way is way easier, then I'm gonna choose to do the easier way if there's no change in the outcome, right? But it's the question of whether the outcome is actually different. It sounds like it is maybe at least enough that it might be, that's worth the conversation, you know?
Yeah, and like I said about our homes are full of IKEA flat pack furniture, you know, like Temu, Amazon. Like people buy more and more things that they don't necessarily need, and they're not made out of traditional, you know, oak and traditional construction. It is things that are match resistant. Yeah, it's great. But like I've already said, as soon as that thing might resist a match, but once it gets going, once it becomes an active part of that fire, the stuff it kicks out, the gases and the fuel that's in it, all the plastics, and they'll go like trains.
You guys have are like Tempur-Pedic foam mattresses big over there like they are here?
I don't really know. I don't think.
I think one of the reason I use it is I think one of the hottest fires I've been in was a room
Yeah,
that was a like Tempur-Pedic high density foam mat, and that thing was absolutely cooking, like absolutely cooking. This thing just throw off so much heat.
that's the one thing over here. They changed our legislation for what can be put in, like what materials can be put in furnishing. So I don't know, like, there's
That's why it was
yeah,
the same or a little bit different
yeah.
from
So
here.
very. I mean, like you hear old blokes talk about fires in the 70s and the 80s where things were filled full of foam and burnt like they just like candles, just absolutely kick out heat. We don't. really have that as often. But obviously, when you have a significant fire now, same as you, time for flashover is way down. Where most of the time we're getting to fires, and like I sort of said, the ventilation limited, so we're all right. And because everything's double glazed or triple glazed, most houses are made out of brick and mortar. We're getting more and more timber construction, to be fair. There's a block social housing flat near where I live, and they're all timber, which is insane to see. I'd never seen it before in the UK. It's like a 5-story timber framed residential block of flat. But again, traditionally it's all bricks and mortar. So normally, if a fire occurs in a room, we don't really have open plan. So like the gas cooling makes sense in that point of view because it's a small fire in a compartment controlled directly by the amount of oxygen available in that room. Chances are it's going to go into ventilation limited fire, and we'll rock up, and 30 gallons a minute is sufficient to put it out. But again, more and more people have open plan housing. People live differently, so we're stuck between eras, and I think slowly we're starting to recognize that and actually think, right, there is definitely better ways like transition. The prime example for me, transitional attack. So it used to be a thing in the UK when I first joined, is that we used to call it crossing lines. So basically, if we turned to a house fire and the windows failed, they didn't really like you putting water through that window. They didn't really like that because we're about to send in a B-A team. You're going to throw loads of water in there. That's with steam, and you're going to poach them. And even more so, if you were to try to have synchronization between external hose stream going in, crew committing in, it was like a massive no-no. Whereas now, transitional attacks are considered a normal thing after like UL studies, making sure it's a straight stream, making sure it's bounced off the lintel off the ceiling. But again, when I first joined, that was kind of like, we don't do that, it's dangerous. But it's come full circle now, and that's an encouraged thing.
Right. Yeah, transitional attack's still a big topic of discussion here for the same reasons. People don't. I think it's all relative, right? So if you're reading and you have something that's just a vent and there's not going to be a delay getting the hose line in place and then putting the fire out and letting all the gases, like, let it draw clean air for victims, kind of thing. But if there's any sort of delay with fire showing, it's general. I think most places are going to be putting water through the window, or trying to put water through the window as nobody else, or even if they put it through for 30 seconds and then they make the transition inside.
Yes.
Yeah, that's still a big topic of discussion here.
Yeah, to be fair, it is here. It's definitely more. I mean, we sort of use this thing saying of like see fire, hit fire. Basically, if it's on fire, the longer it burns, it's only going to escalate that situation. So if we call it lights out. So if we basically put an external stream in, we'll do it until the flames drop down, and then we knock it off, wait, and hopefully by that time, we've got a crew committing in, and they'll put it out internally. And like I said, I had a conversation with someone before, and for whatever reason, they had this assumption that the UK fire service or like European fire services were like defensive only. And I'm like, you're someone as like a crew commander. Like there's times we're going to house fires, and you have to like pull people back. So whoa, like get yourself dressed. Like just chill out. You're going to go in, like, but we need to make sure we've got everything in place. And I don't know where they've got that perception from, but yeah, mm,
I don't think that at least people I've talked to about it have that perception, but the idea of I think it's the idea of the gas cooling
yeah,
versus high flow seems like you're not going into, like, you know what I mean? It's
yes,
kind of different. And then there was I don't even know if this was the UK, but there was this video going around for a while of this very strange nozzle where they put it up to the window and actually flowed water
that's not
out
up.
and drew all the oxygen.
Yeah,
I think a lot, what in the hell is that? And
I've,
I don't know if that was actually the UK, but it was definitely somewhere near.
yeah, I've seen it's like a Venturi nozzle, exactly that. It's going to draw everything out. It's the most anti-American firefighting branch you could possibly make, I think. Yeah, that's not up. Basically, if we turn to any fire, 9 times out of 10 we're going into it, and the only times you won't go into it as if it's like a known derelict building. And even then, I've gone before like derelicts where it's known to be a squatter's place, and the place is an absolute tip, like holes in the floor, like big drop. But the last decent fire I had in a derelict building, we searched it. It was massive. We must have gone in. Our hose reel was 60 meters on the drum. I'd gone 60 meters, just about managed to put the fire out by like bending myself around a corner. And then we searched the rest of the building with no hose line, which again, if you go to the training academy, the training school over here, it's like, right, you can't do that. It's dangerous. But, we both have thermal imaging cameras. We've got torches. Like, the fire's out. It's about as safe as it can be. And that place was massive. And the holes in the floor, like, I could have fallen like 3-4 floors and it would have been a very, very bad day. But the premise again is that if we have good enough intelligence that someone is in there, and the command is fairly happy with the firefighters going in, that they're happy that they've got the skill set and the experience to manage that risk, they'll go in. The only times they won't go in is if that building's about to collapse, or if it's literally every possible window and vent is roaring full of flames. Then obviously, we have a firefighting maxim that basically says that we'll take some risk at every single fire, but we take most risk, i.e. our lives, at fires where there's opportunity to save life. And if there's no opportunity to save life, then it's like, well, if that light's extinct, we can't bring them back, sort of thing, and we're not going to lose someone for.
Right. Yeah, we have we talked about this a little bit. We had the culture, a lot of people call it the culture of safety, where the pendulum seemed to have swung a little bit far, where they didn't want, we stopped putting people in, same as you, without going ahead of the hose line or in buildings unless there was a report of people. And I feel like we've had a big shift, like a grassroots shift in the culture of firefighting here in America towards the search and the victim, and assuming that there is a victim in every fire until you get inside and confirm that there's not. And I think, like, we're still fighting that a little bit because the culture of not doing that was very strong. But we're doing the same things over here. We're fighting against that as well. We're trying to put people in buildings more often maybe than we are at the moment, and fighting the fires from the inside.
The other thing as well is that, again, for here, our number of operational incidents that are working jobs, that are fires, are diminishing, more and more. This still happens, don't get me wrong, but with influx of new firefighters, that unless you send them in buildings, they're never going to get the experience. I was really fortunate whenever I was on watch when I first joined, and like, we call them watches, you call them shifts, or like your A companies and B companies, but for us they're called watches. It's because the UK fire service has naval routes basically. And I was fortunate enough to be on watch with really senior blokes during the 90s. And every fire I went to, it was, I'm like rubbing the headlights, like, I've got to get in there, I've got to do it. And they're like, no, just chill out, chill out. And they like point things out to me. I remember we had a fire in a storage unit. We forced this door, and it was like thick as a blag. It punched down to the corridor, and it was like, I was like, probably, I wasn't stood up, but I was crouching, and it hit me in the face piece, and it just stuck to my face piece. I couldn't see anything. I'm like trying to like right my face. And he like pulls me down. And he's like, right, starters, stay low. I was, all right. I was like, right, should we put it out, Mike? He's like, no, just wait, let it develop. It's going to show us where it is in a minute. And obviously, once it stopped being ventilation limited, the smoke layer lifts. He's like, right, there's the fire. So I'm like, about to pull the branch over. But he's like, no, just wait. Give it a little more second, let it light up the room, because we're going to use that fire's light to see the rest of the room. Let's see how big it is. I'm like, yeah, but I've got a thermal imaging camera. I've got a tick, scan it. He's like, yeah, but this is, the depth perception of that camera is off. Your depth perception of your eye is almost near on perfect. He's like, just wait. And I remember we must have been there. This whole thing was maybe like a minute, but it felt like forever. But I look back on it now, and I think I was in the job for maybe a year then, and that's kind of like them experiences. I was so fortunate to have quite a lot of them, where I had senior people slow things down for me and point things out. And if you don't go internal, you don't go inside, you don't get that. So that's a massive thing for us, that, as often as we can, we're going to get in and do it, because we need, you don't get any better reps than doing the thing for.
Yeah, absolutely. That we try to teach that in the academy, and I think again, there's kind of like a little bit of a gap in how techniques were done in training. But we tell them too, like as soon as you see the fire, don't put the water on it. I mean, there are times you have to, right? But take that second. It feels like forever, but use that fire to be able to look around the room. Is there a victim in the room? Where's the fire? Where are the windows? Where's the door? You know, you have a second to look. You know, nobody's saying to take 2 minutes or 3 minutes and sit there and let the fire like get out of its compartment, but you have a few seconds to actually use your senses and use the light and stuff that the fire gives you to do that. And I think that's huge. Slowing things down, you know, that whole moniker, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
slow things down, we do things more efficiently, and the outcome is bigger than if we just rushed around. Because as soon as you put water on the fire, you're not going to see anything again until
Lights out.
you get it vented. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. Like as soon as the fire lights out for a couple of minutes. So,
You're trying to figure out.
and one of the things too, I was going to say is like the same thing, probably all over the world. I would imagine the amount of fires are down. But one of the things we're finding is that even with the fires going down, the civilian casualties are not going down. And so for us as a fire service, we have to figure out why that is. Is that something that we're doing? Are we not occupying the space enough? Are we doing something that's contributing to that? I think I was telling you, I recently saw that we can now document civilian deaths in the per hundreds of fires instead of the per thousands of fires, which is a big change from 20 years ago. So obviously there needs to be some conversation about how we're doing things over here as well.
Which is again the interesting thing. We had a conversation about operating ahead of the hose line, or like your VES, the ventilator surge isolate. Again, for us, that's like what the just can't even fathom it. But we're having a conversation. It is a bunch of instructors, and we were sort of saying like, you know, realistically, when we set fire conditions for recruit, admittedly the buildings, you know, they're concrete buildings with pyro brick. Inherently, most of the building's not going to combust, but obviously we're still setting fires, and it's still live fires, and it's still actual smoke that can combust. And we're walking around by ourselves, no hose, like loading, you know, cribs full of pallets with flames roaring around our heads, and we're perfectly all right because, you know, we're trained, I say trained, quote unquote, we've got the experience of doing it. We're like, so what's the difference between that and, you know, what we do in reality, what we end up doing is that we spend so much time, you know, not everybody, but we end up gas cooling and taking our time to get in there using the thermal imaging camera, which is all good stuff. It's all safe practice. But actually, I think it's the Swiss. Let's do a podcast, and they were saying their company officer basically rocks up, and because they have the clip-on face piece that just goes straight into their helmet, he rocks up, it's on fire, clips his mask in, goes in by himself. He'll locate the fire compartment, and he'll close it down. And then from there, they'll say, right, okay, it's a big fire, it's a small fire. Either, you know, bring a hose reel or bring a lay flat, bring an 1.75 inches. And we're talking about thinking, does that not make more sense? If we can get in there, punch in there, close it down, and that person can then request the appropriate firefighting line, firefighting medium, and that person then can start a search. That makes a lot more sense than what. And I'm not saying that's right and what we're doing is wrong, but, you know, from our stance as a UK fire service, we'd look at that and think, oh, that's inherently dangerous, or we couldn't ever do that. We couldn't really fathom ever doing that. But, you know, every single day, fire instructors are doing exactly that in burn buildings, just creating conditions for firefighters. And it's just trying to normalize it and kind of have that conversation to realize actually it's not as dangerous as we think it is. And there's, like we said before, there's always more time than we think. You know, my argument always is like things don't flash over straight away. There is telltale signs, you know, that you have got some warning, even for backdrafts. You know, if we know the signs and symptoms of that fire phenomena, you know what to look out for. If you don't know what it is, then it is going to catch you out. But if people are well trained, they can understand the conditions, then they're more educated, they have a better situational awareness, and they can take that information and do what they can with it. If that means that we don't search ahead of the line, we don't. We take hose line in. It just, I think it gives us more options at the moment we don't unfortunately have.
Yeah, and I think a couple things. One is it's not just the UK; the whole world is a fire service. owes it to the people we work for to constantly see if what we're doing can be done better, right? I mean, you're doing it wrong. Is there a better way to do it? Because we owe it to the people that we serve to do it better if we can do it better.
Definitely.
I think like just like having those conversations is good. And I think one of the things that's huge is I know here in America we have like the fire rescue survey that started a few years ago. So it's voluntary, not everybody does it, but they document if you go on there, they document rescues and they document, you know, where they were found, how long into the fire, like all this data. And then we can start using that data to say, you know, yeah, the American Fire Service loses around 80 people a year, 80 firefighters a year. But almost none of that is operating ahead of the hose line.
Yeah,
Almost none of it is operating ahead of the hose line. It's heart issues and weight issues and vehicle crashes and all of these things. So we put the fear that firefighters are dying every year, but then we don't actually use the data to tell people what the deaths are from. But this seems a little bit scary, so we kind of shy away from it.
yeah,
And in reality, if we take that and have those conversations, we realize, like you said, it's not that it's not dangerous. I mean, firefighting is inherently dangerous, but if we don't build robots and we build firefighters that can think and take into account things that are happening, then we can be fairly safe in those dangerous situations.
exactly that. I couldn't have put it better myself. And it's, I remember, we don't really have anything. I've heard about that firefighter survey before, and I find it fascinating. We don't really have that, but I remember I was doing a training session on our emergency procedures, basically for breathing apparatus, and I looked at the number of firefighters in America, fatalities of firefighters in our number, and statistically we lose more firefighters in America because I think when I looked at it, it was like over 1 million firefighters in America. That was like paid, volunteer, career across all of it. As we have, I think at the time, we have like 36,000 firefighters. So, as a percentage, if we lose one or two, that mathematical power is a, and unfortunately, the last year we lost two firefighters at a building collapse, and then 2023, I think we lost a guy up in Scotland in a building fire. So like, they used to be, I'm not say fairly rare, but unfortunately it's getting more frequent. And I'm not saying, I don't know why these reasons are. There's probably a host of reasons, but it is a little bit, concerning actually that, are some of these things preventable? I don't really know. One of the people that unfortunately lost his life, Martin Sadler, he, he was crushed by a hangar door, basically. They went to a fire in a hangar. It was a place called Bist. The door, old World War II hangar, and fire in there. It was a car showroom, but it was sort of vintage cars, basically. Small fire in this place, and they'd gone to go through the pilot's door of this massive hangar door, and it wasn't hung properly on the roller shutters, and the thing just collapsed on them, and it killed two of them, killed two, and seriously maimed two other firefighters, and killed the civilian that was letting them in the building. And I knew Martin from the fire college, and he was a really experienced bloke. He'd worked in training. He was a firefighter. He's leading firefighter in London. So you can't. When he passed, and it found out it was him, and I spoke to some other blokes at the college to kind of confirm it was him before the news sort of set. There's like people on stations saying, "Oh, it's probably this, it's probably that," and obviously when I found out, I was thinking, he's a very knowledgeable bloke. He's trained recruits. He works at the college. Like the dude's been like 20 odd years. Absolute stoic of a guy. Nice guy. It's not because he didn't know better. Freak things happen and we can't control. And I guess it's trying to figure out our line of duty deaths are not from heart attack. It is from the environment killing firefighter. And it's just
I think that's important though. Is like I said, firefighting is always going to be inherently dangerous. There's going to be spontaneous things that the most knowledgeable, well trained firefighter is not going to see or recognize. It's just going to happen, but we can't let those instances dictate not doing anything. You know
100%.
what I mean? You can't recoil from doing the job from something like that, which I feel like kind of what you're saying as well.
Yeah, definitely that, and it's like, we sort of off the back of, whenever we lose people, like we call it tombstone legislation. So like, in 2007 and 2000, I want to say 11, we lost 4 firefighters at two separate incidences. The one again, I've seen some American the Brit operator sets, but the way your cylinder sits on the back plate, it's quite flush, isn't it? There's no real gap. Whereas in the
Right, correct.
UK, it used to be the cylinder would sit with a back plate, and basically you'd have a space here in between the cylinder and the back plate. It's Harrow Court and Shirley Towers are the two fires. We lost two firefighters at both of them. They got entangled in cable. So cables basically serious fire phenomena. Both of them were like wind-driven fire, and where it's burnt all the cabling away, that's dropped, and the copper's basically stuck to their kit. But the cables that didn't melt have dropped between the back plate and the cylinder, and it's just tangled them up, and they're in like punishing heat, dark, and they can't get themselves out. So off the back of that, we now have these anti-entanglement straps that basically prevent cables from dropping in, and every single set in the UK carries a pair of rated wire cutters for exactly that reason. So like, we're quite fortunate that we do, like, people don't lose their lives in vain, if that makes sense. And that's probably not the right way to put it. Unfortunately, like, these people have lost their lives, which you bring them back in a heartbeat, but it's quite fortunate that we actually learn from it, and we don't just say, "Oh, that was terrible." We're quite good at learning from the errors that we've made when we've lost firefight.
Yeah, I think there's a balance because you don't want to like destroy their legacy,
Is
you know, and say, "Oh, they did X, Y, Z wrong." But also the biggest thing you can to like you said, make their death not in vain is to learn something from it. So if you say, "Hey, these things contributed, let's make sure that we don't do these things anymore," you know, in reason or whatever the case is, then at least their death contributed because if it wasn't them, it might have been someone else. So they made the sacrifice for somebody else
yeah,
effectively, you know.
and that's the way. Whenever about sort of emergency procedures and stuff that we do, we talk about them. These people lost their life. We have an opportunity now to learn from it, and and straight away, I mean, the buy-in you get from the people, we start talking about it. I normally write their names on the board or have their pictures and say, what relevance is this to this topic? And people, newer people aren't, "No, I'm not really sure." And then you explain, and all of a sudden it is like the switch is turned on, and they're like, right, I need to pay attention to this now. So yeah,
Man, that's great, man. Well, we're an hour and a half in. We might have to bring you back on, Matt, because we didn't.
it's, it's
I
quite
got to pick up. We didn't even get to the BA shuffle yet.
no, no, that's yeah, that would be. I'm quite looking forward to that conversation because that would be an interesting one because that's going to that and our BA boards are going to be quite a fascinating thing to talk.
So saying that, yeah, we get off here. I'll shoot you a message, but we should plan another. If I didn't have to pick up my kid, I would just keep going. But I got to go get him.
Well, I've got
But
to do better back time here as
I
well.
have another. Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit before, and I don't want to get into it because then we're going to get sucked in, and I'm going to be late. But there's a lot of. It seems so different on the side. Then when we talk about the history and like why we're doing things and how we're doing things, the similarities are more than I would have expected from seeing the videos of it and stuff. So I guess on that note, stay tuned because we're gonna have Matt back on if he's willing to come and put another episode out. Because I talked to a lot of people from all over the country, and even region to region here in America, things are very different and it's very interesting. And then you add a whole different country and continent to
Massive.
the mix, and it's massively different, but still somehow similar. You know what I mean? And I just find it really, really interesting.
I
Really
think
interesting.
the one thing I always find fascinating is that no matter where you go around the world and speak to firefighters, they're always similar people in terms of the mindset, the jokes, the way the people are. Yeah, that's the one thing that for whatever reason is constant. It's the type. It
Yeah.
must be the personality type of the people that do the job.
Yeah, whatever the genetic trait is that makes firefighting a calling
Yeah,
somehow has that piece of it.
yeah, yeah.
But
I'm gonna claim the Europeans in the European sort of ancestors that went to America that have made it so good. That's what.
there you go. That's how you I like that. Yeah, man. So I think that's probably a good spot to stop. Before we go though, did you have anything else that you wanted to just leave out on? Like I said, I know there's a lot more to talk about, but anything that you wanted to be said and or anything like that before we get going? And if not, definitely I think we're gonna have to have another conversation because this was good.
No, I'm trying to plug my phone in before it dies because I've just looked at how much battery I've got left. No, no. To be fair, I think we probably covered as much as we could in the time we've got. So yeah, I'd say it's good time to finish.
All right, man. Well, I and you can see it's dark over there. Obviously, we have the big time difference. What time is it? They're going on 9 o'clock, right?
Yes, it is. I've just walked in and woke my daughter up as well. So that's just not. Oh dear. Yeah, it's not. It's almost 9 o'clock over here.
All right, man. Well, yeah, I'll let you go for now, and we'll definitely have you back on. And to everybody else that's out there, thanks for tuning in. The podcast was kind of off the air for a little bit. A lot of big changes around for me, but happy to have sat down and get it going again. And I think this was a really good place to start it, man. So I appreciate you coming on, Matt.
No.
Appreciate you reaching out to me.
Yeah. It's one of them things. I don't know what the topic was you were talking about, but I just thought, I could probably weigh into this slightly. So yeah, I couldn't tell you what I was listening to or what triggered my head. I just thought this is probably an interesting conversation to have with a different perspective.
Yeah, it definitely is, man. I appreciate it. All right, thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you guys later.